Today we're going to, like I said, go over some of the basics of winter tree identification. And if you, again, it's fun to start this time of year. Hopefully you've done some of this before though, just so you've got some of that feel of looking at the different characteristics of trees. So when we're doing winter tree identification, we're really going to focus on deciduous trees in this presentation, in part because we have far more deciduous trees in this state than we do of our evergreens or our needle-bearing conifers. So when we're starting with deciduous tree winter identification, it's always handy to have a hand lens. So if you've got a hand lens or a magnifying glass, take it out with you, because we're going to be looking at some characteristics that are pretty small on these little twigs, not quite as easy as those big leaves. So let's go over just a few of the characteristics that we will be focusing on in winter tree ID. So let's kind of look at some of the parts of the bud. The first one is our terminal bud that we have highlighted up here. The terminal bud is where this bud's what's going to make this twig elongate. It's got all that meristematic tissue that allows that twig to grow longer and have additional flower buds and additional leaf buds in it. So that is our terminal bud. And I want to hide me. There we go. Perfect. And then we have our lateral buds, and the lateral buds are the ones that are on the side, not at the top. And these are from these buds, a side branch can grow. And usually you'll notice that these are found in the leaf axils. So there had been a leaf down here. So it's in that axil of the leaf. And then we'll look at the bud scale scars. Okay, so these can be good, a good identifying characteristic. And these can also be called terminal bud scale scar. So this is where our terminal bud was last year. So this past growing season, this tree has elongated, that twig has elongated that much and set its new terminal bud. And the same over here, there's our bud scale scar there, and that twig has grown that much and set a new terminal bud. And then another characteristic that can be useful in a winter tree identification is looking at the lenticels. And the lenticels are pores that permit gas exchange through that bark into that tree. And the lenticels can vary in color, can vary in size, and sometimes they're not even present. So those can be good identifying characteristics. We've got a few more. And so the first one, and this is a really good one, and a lot of great different characteristics that are helpful in IDing winter trees and winter deciduous trees, is the leaf scar. And you'll notice these vary depending on species, and they're going to vary depending on also the leaf size. So this is a maple right here, and it has a very narrow leaf scar because it's a relatively small leaf. But we go over here to this bitternut hickory, which is a larger compound leaf, and we have a much larger leaf scar. It's almost shield shape. So leaf scars are going to vary depending on species and the types of leaves that are on there. So those are really good identifying characteristic. And when we use our dichotomous key a little bit later on, you're going to see there's a lot of questions about leaf scars. Next, you're going to look at the bundle and vein scar. And these are the veins or vascular tissue that carry water to the leaf. And you can see I've got, this one's highlighted. On this maple, we have 3 bundle scars, and you can see this one real well right there in the center. Since it's a small leaf, there weren't as many bundle or vein scars to carry that water to the leaf. But when we come over to this bitternut hickory, we'll notice there's a whole bunch of bundle or vein scars. And this is where those hand lens or your magnifying glass comes in handy. But so you'll see, because larger leaf, there are more bundle and vein scars. So another good identifying characteristic. And then last is a stipule scar. And these occur in pairs or surround the twig just above the leaf scar. See, there's the leaf scar, and it's just above that leaf scar. And not all trees have these. A stipule is just a modified leaf that you'll find at the base of the petiole of that leaf. So not all trees have that, but that can be a really good identifying characteristic, and we will see this one a little bit later on. So those are some of the main characteristics that we're going to focus on in winter tree identification while we use our winter dichotomous key. There is another one I did want to mention, and that is the pith. And that's the spongy inner layer of our twigs. And these vary depending on species. So some piths can be round, just like you see in this. So this is a twig we've cut off and just cut a cross section of it. And you can see that round spongy pith. Sometimes they vary in color. The color can be an important characteristic to help you identify it as well. Sometimes those piths can be angled or they can be star-shaped. Like our oaks tend to have star-shaped piths. So all of the oaks in the genus will have this more star-shaped pith as opposed to a round pith. And then another characteristic, another way to look at the pith is to actually like cut that twig in half so that you can see the whole pith. And you can see on some species, it's a continuous solid pith. There's nothing different about it. It looks uniform throughout. Or there can be a chambered pith like this, and you can see all these different little chambers in that pith. Like this is an example. This is a black walnut. They tend to have a chambered pith. Black walnut and white walnut or butternut will have a chambered pith. All right. So then when we start our dichotomous key, it's just on with twigs. It's just like when we're doing it with tree ID with the leaves on. We're going to look to see if our leaves, or in this case, our buds, are how they are arranged on that twig. Are they arranged opposite from one another, right across from one another? And you see these are right across. You can see these are across from one another. So these are oppositely arranged. Or are they alternately arranged? So you've got one here, and then as it moves up the stem, it's going to be alternating another twig up here. They're not across from each other. They're alternate. Now, a good thing about trees here in Kentucky, we have 4 groups of trees that have oppositely arranged buds and leaves. So that does help narrow it down a little bit for us. Our maples, ash, dogwoods, and buckeyes are all oppositely arranged buds and leaves. So if you can remember the mnemonic mad buck, maple, ash, dogwood, buckeye, you can remember those trees that have oppositely arranged buds and leaves. So when you walk up to your tree and you pull down that branch and you're looking at it, and if you see I've got oppositely arranged buds, you know you've got a maple, ash, dogwood, or buckeye. So that kind of helps narrow it down for you. All the rest of our trees are alternately arranged. And I will say, while these are groups of trees. We have numerous kinds of maple. We have several different kinds of ash, several different kinds of dogwood, and 2 buckeyes. So there's still numerous trees in there, but at least it gets you to the genus. All right, some other tools for tree identification, and this is the one we're going to use today. It's the Winter Tree Finder, and it's for identifying deciduous trees in winter. It is a dichotomous key. And we'll go through that in just a minute, but it's a great handy little pocket guide. You can get these from Amazon for about $5, and it is truly pocket size. It's about 75 pages, if that, and it has about 50 to 60 different kinds of trees, and it's great for working in the eastern half of the United States. So it's not overwhelming with the number of trees that are in there. Like if we took out one of our field guides that we might have used if you took dendrology or some kind of plant identification in college where it has 700 different species in it or something. Another one, that a companion that goes with that, is the Tree Finder, the Manual for Identification of Trees by Their Leaves, also a pocket guide. And this is the one we use a lot for doing our usual tree identification workshops. And this is a dichotomous key based on identifying trees by leaves. There are some websites, and I didn't put them on there because you all can find them, but Virginia Tech has a great website, Virginia Tech Dendro, and they do have a dichotomous key online. They also have an app, but it's very robust. There are hundreds of species of trees in there, so there's a lot to get through. And I think it's always best when you're starting out to make it as easy as possible for yourself. So start out with these are the most common trees that we're going to find. And then there's the iNaturalist. It's a free app that you can download to your phone. And I believe Dr. Crocker has spoken about this in the citizen science segment that she's done. So this is an app you can download, and it's not a dichotomous key, but it is an app that you'll take a picture of your twig, and then it's going to give you some options. It's going to throw up maybe 10 different species. Does your twig look like this, or this? And you'll look at those pictures to see which one looks most like your specimen and for help you with identification. So not a key, but it can be a useful tool as well. All right, so let's get started with identifying. So we've gone to our Winter Tree Finder, and we have opened it up to the first page where it says, well, where the key starts on page 6. The first part of the book has got lots of information on talking about different characteristics of trees. They have diagrams. It's very accessible language, as you'll see in here. It's not overly scientific. We use these a lot in 4-H, starting in about 4th grade up. So this is the type of thing that's very accessible. So since it's a dichotomous key, there's always going to be two statements or questions, and it's going to, you'll answer that, or whichever statement works best for you. It's going to send you to two more statements or questions to help narrow down what it is you're trying to identify, what your species is. So when we start on our little book, it says begin here, can't miss that. A lot of times it'll just say start herb, there'll be a number. Let's read these two first statements and see which our twig, this is just a close-up, this is a far away picture and a close-up of our twig that we're going to identify. It asks, the first one, if the tree is a conifer and needle bearing but sheds its needles in winter, we want to go to this symbol below. Or if the tree is not a conifer, we want to go to this symbol on the next page. Well, if any of you all remember, we covered bald cypress a couple of weeks ago on as tree of the week. And here you can actually see what the twig looks like of a bald cypress, and it would have that cone on there. And we look at this, and this does not look anything like that bald cypress twig. And in fact, we see very prominent leaf scars and buds. So we don't feel that this is a conifer. So we're going to go over to the next page and remember that deciduous tree without leaves symbol. It's the top bracket. And now it's going to ask us about the arrangement of those leaf scars and buds. Remember I said that's going to be one of those first questions. It's in the same when we're identifying by leaves as it is when we're identifying by buds. So it's asking us if the leaf scars are alternate, and look, it even explains to you what it means by alternate and gives you a diagram in case you forget. Or if there are two or more leaf scars opposite each other on the twig, gives you a good picture diagram to show you what it means. So let's look at our example here. Those leaf, we can't see the scars on this one, but those buds clearly look opposite. And we can see over here, these look opposite. And then we come to our close-up, we can see these buds are opposite each other, as are the leaf scars on that twig. So we feel that that our leaf scars are opposite. So we're going to go to this bracket down below, just the next one down, and look, two more questions. So the first one says, if the leaf scars are whorled, that is, if there are more than two leaf scars around the twig at the same level, it is a hardy catalpa. Or if the leaf scars are not whorled but come in pairs, each one on the opposite side from one another, we want to go to page 44. Well, we do not see, we only see two leaf scars, don't we? One, two, and we only see two buds. We're not seeing three buds. So our sample fits this bottom criteria. So we want to turn over to page 44. And it's the bracket at the top where it showed that you had opposite leaf scars. And so now it's asking us a little bit more about our twig, about how big it is, because this can be important. Some twigs are going to be much thicker and bigger, especially if they have big compound leaves, than something like a dogwood, which has a very small leaf. So it asks if the entire twig is 1/4 of an inch or more in thickness, and the terminal bud is oval, and that means there's just one terminal bud and conspicuous. We want to go to the next page. Or if the entire twig is not 1/4 of an inch or more thick, or does not have an oval conspicuous, does not have one single oval conspicuous bud. And let me show you what they mean by that. So this is the oval bud, and that's just the one single bud. And when we look at let's look at our sample. Our sample is not quite, oh, and by the way, on those tree finders, they have a little measuring tape on the back. So if it's asking you questions about measurements, you've got a ruler handy on the back of your book. You don't have to carry one out in the field with you. When we look here, this is the 1/2 inch mark right there. And our twig is not quite 1/4 of an inch thick. So it doesn't meet that first criteria, and our bud is not a single terminal bud. In fact, it looks like we've got 3 up there. So we do not meet the criteria of the first statement. Instead, we meet the criteria of the second statement. So we're going to go down below here, and it says if the terminal buds are rough and dry and the bundle scars form an almost continuous line on the shield shape or oval leaf scar, it is an ash. So we'd go to the next page. Or the next statement says, if the terminal buds are not rough and dry and the leaf scars are narrow and inconspicuous with 3 bundle scars, we want to go below. So let's come over here and look. Well, granted, we can't feel what our terminal bud feels like, but it looks kind of rough. You can see there's a texture on that. And then the great one here is it has a shield shape definitely a large leaf scar, much larger than this narrow inconspicuous one. And we have a continuous line of our bundle scars. You remember those are the veins that carried the water to the leaf. So we have a nice continuous, looks like a horseshoe shape of those. So we have some type of ash. So it tells us to go to page 46. So let's flip over to page 46. And we went to the ash symbol at the top. And so now it asks us if the twigs are four-sided, and we can't really answer anything about the bark because we don't have a picture of the bark. We're only looking at the twig here, and we don't have the seed because the seeds have already they've already ripened and blown away. But I wanted to show you what they mean by a four-sided twig. So that example is a blue ash, and if you can actually see the ridges on that, it is square. If you rolled that back and forth on your fingers, you could feel the squareness of that twig. Or if the twigs are not four-sided, go below. Well, this is not a four-sided twig. We don't see those ridges on it to indicate that it is square. In fact, it is a round twig. So we're going to have to follow this symbol down below. And now it's going to ask us another set of questions. It says if the leaf scar is notched at the top so that it is somewhat horseshoe shaped, and then we can't really answer anything about the fruit because we don't have it, but it does, here's a picture of the bark. Here it says, and the bark is ridged, forming diamond-shaped areas. It is a white ash. Okay, well, let's see what the next statement says. If the leaf scar is a semicircle or oval, we want to go to the next page. Well, I wanted to show you what a semicircle leaf scar looked like, because I will say ours does not look like a semicircle. It looks notched. We can actually see where the bud pokes down in there. And this one, on the lateral bud, you can really see that it is not a nice, neat semicircle or D-shaped. It looks more U-shaped. This is our sample here. But here's one that does have that semicircle or oval leaf scar, and that's the green ash. Okay, so we actually have a white ash here. And so that's a good way to tell these two species apart in the winter, is that our white ash is going to have more of a U or a V-shaped leaf scar, and our green ash is going to have that D-shaped leaf scar. And you can see that nice, I mean, it's a great looking D right there. And then the bark is kind of helps confirm it with the bark is ridged, forming diamond shaped areas. And you can see those diamond shapes in that bark, very characteristic of white ash. All right, so hopefully we got that. It's kind of, see, it's pretty easy to get through when you don't remember things. It explains it. It's got lots of great diagrams for you. You can even see it shows you what the white ash twig should look like, and that looks just like what we have right here. And then it'll show you where the white ash grows, and it's native to the eastern half of the United States. All right, let's try one more. Okay, so we go back to page 6 again. We've got a new twig. And we can go a little faster now because we've kind of gone through this. Is this tree a conifer, or is this tree not a conifer? And we can tell this tree is not a conifer. We don't have little places for needles all over it. We've got very, very easy to see conspicuous buds. So we know this is not a conifer. So we're going to follow our deciduous tree symbol over to the next page at the top. And now we're going to look at the arrangement of those leaf scars and those buds. Are the leaf scars alternate, or are the leaf scars opposite? Well, we've got a leaf scar down here. So the scar would be right below the bud. And then we move up the twig before we run into another leaf scar. So this would be alternately arranged leaf scars and buds. So this is we're going to go to the bottom set of brackets this time. So now it's going to ask us about the thickness of this twig. Is this twig over a ½ inch thick? We want to go to the next page. Or if the twig is not over a ½ inch thick, we want to go to page 9. Well, this twig is not even a ½ inch thick, because here's our ½ inch mark and there's the ½ inch. So this is definitely not over a ½ inch thick. This is a much slender, finer twig than what we would be seeing here that's over a ½ inch thick. So we're going to go to page 9. We go to page 9, it was the bracket. In case you forget, you can flip back. We're looking for that twig with just the dot on it. And that's the bottom bracket here. So now look, we got a question about pith. So it says if the twig is stout and tough, well, we kind of already determined it wasn't stout and tough, but difficult to break. You all can't tell that because you're just looking at pictures right now. With light colored lenticels and tan or brown pith, and if the leaf scars are large, pale, and somewhat heart-shaped, then we would go over to page 36. Or if the twig does not have this combination of characteristics, it needs to have all of those that entire combination of characteristics. If it does not have this combination of characteristics, we want to go to the next page. So let's look at our sample. Let's just start right there with the pith. The twig's been cut in half. We do not have tan or brown pith. It looks green actually. And when we look at our leaf scar, it is not heart-shaped. It's kind of oval actually. So it does not fit the criteria to go to page 36. It fits the criteria to go to the next page with that little twig symbol. So we go to it's the one on the top set of brackets. Now it's asking us about our terminal buds. Remember, that's the one at the top that's responsible for shoot elongation. And it says if there are several buds of different sizes are clustered irregularly at the tip of the twig, see, it gives you a little drawing to show you what it means. Or if the buds are not clustered, we want to go below. Well, we don't see clustered buds. We see actually one bud up there, one nice bud. Actually, it looks valvate, like it's got just two scales on it. So we're going to need to go to the bracket below. And it says if there are catkins, and you remember catkins are what we would find on a birch tree. Looks like little tiny tails or little tiny worms hanging off of the tree. Or if there are no catkins. Well, we don't see any catkins on our twig, so we are going to need to go to the next page. It looks like it's a three-pronged twig there. So we'll go to the next page, and that's the bracket at the top. Now it asks us if there are protuberances on the twig, either thorns or thorn-like twigs, or if there is not, we want to go to this down here below, or if there are no such protuberances, we want to go all the way to the bottom bracket. Well, we don't see any thorns or thorn-like twigs on this branch at all, do we? It looks kind of smooth. We've got a nice rounded bud, a rounded leaf scar. So we're going to go, it fits the criteria to go to the bottom bracket. Now it asks us if there is a line, a stipule scar. Remember that stipule scar that goes, it's above the leaf scar, and it can be in pairs or can encircle the twig. And this one actually encircles the twig. I'm completely encircling the twig at each leaf scar. We want to go to the next page, or if there is no such line. Well, we clearly have that line, and this was actually the one we used as the example of showing what a stipule scar was. So we need to go to the next page with that twig that looks like it's got a circle around it. And that's the top bracket. And it asks us about our leaf scar. Now it says if each leaf scar completely encircles a bud and the buds are brown, conical with only one scale, it's a sycamore. And it shows you what that should look like, a leaf scar that completely encircles that twig. So it's like encircles the bud. So it's like the bud sitting in a cup. Or if the leaf scar does not encircle the bud, we want to go below. Well, let's look at our leaf scar. It does not appear to be encircling our bud. It sits below the bud instead of encircling it. So we do not meet that criteria. This is not an American sycamore. So we go down to the bottom to this next bracket, and it says if the end bud or the terminal bud is shaped like a duck's bill, it's a tulip tree or a yellow poplar. Or if the end bud is not flattened like a duck's bill, but is large and egg-shaped or arrowhead-shaped or oblong, it is a magnolia. Well, here, you can see this picture right here. I would clearly say that looks very much like a duck's bill. In fact, that's one of those things we always say about yellow poplar. The terminal bud looks like a duck's bill. And this is it has two bud scales, and it's a valvate bud scale. So there's just those two on there, and it gives it that great look to look like a duck's bill. So we have just identified a tulip tree or a yellow poplar using its twig. And then you can actually compare it to the picture of the twig right here. And even that drawing looks just like what we have right here. Those nice round leaf scars with that little bud tucked up in there and that big duck bill-like terminal bud. And you can see the natural range of yellow poplar, the eastern half of the United States. So there we go. We've got through two trees relatively quickly, but I think this is a great thing to, if you haven't tried it, to give it a try. Get yourself a winter tree finder. Like I said, you can get these from Amazon for about $5. And go out and try identifying a few. Grab your boots, get your tree finder, get your hand lens and a hat and gloves, especially right now. And good luck going out trying to identify trees in winter.